In the Middle East, there were very different plants to gather. Growing wild between the trees were two cereal grasses, barley and wheat, far more plentiful and nutritious than sago. These simple grasses would have a profound impact, setting humanity on a course towards modern civilization. But it would take a catastrophic change in the climate before this would happen. Twelve and a half thousand years ago, the world's climate became highly volatile. The long-term thaw that had brought about the end of the last ice age suddenly went into reverse. Global temperatures dropped and ice age conditions returned. The world became colder and drier. The Middle East suffered an environmental collapse. Animal herds died off. So did many trees and plants. The drought lasted for more than 1,000 years. People were forced to travel farther and look much harder to find any source of food. But despite the conditions, they would somehow survive and even prosper. Here in the Middle East, a new way of life would come into being, one that would change the face of the earth. Ian Kite is a Canadian archaeologist who specializes in the Stone Age history of the Middle East. His work is focused on a site in the Jordan Valley near the Dead Sea, a place known as Dra. Kite is a co-director of the dig and works with an international team of archaeologists. They've uncovered the remains of ancient dwellings that were clearly more sophisticated than any hunter-gatherer shelters.
This is what's right here. Those are never really exposed all the way around.
They believe this was a small village, one of the earliest permanent villages anywhere in the world. People were starting to put down roots.
What we would have had was this village of, I don't know, 40 to 50 people living in the same place. We would have had a series of oval huts that would have been partially cut into the ground. And these would have been very much the first time people settled down and lived in communities in a really extensive way.
When they radiocarbon dated the site, they discovered that the village first emerged 11,500 years ago, at the same time as the end of the drought in the Middle East. But how was it possible to feed an entire village if times were so hard? After 4 years of digging at Dra, the archaeologists believe they have an answer. It lies in this unique structure.
What you can see here is the outline of a mud wall coming all the way around here. And on the inside we have a series of upright stones that have been chipped in such a way where you can see a notch on them. And there would have been a series of beams over top of that with a floor across it. And basically you would have had a dry, humidity-controlled environment where they could take grain, they could take any plants, they could dry them out, put them in here, protect them from insects, protect them from moisture, protect them from water percolating through. What that ends up being, from our perspective, is probably the world's first granary in some form, a place where they're able to store food in a particular location on a year-round basis.
The team at Dra believes the granary was an oval-shaped mud wall building at the center of the village, a place where grain could be stored collectively. And the grains that were being stored were primarily wheat and barley. While other plants were no longer available, these cereal grasses were hardy enough to survive and durable enough to be stored for years. But if this was a time of scarcity, how was there enough grain to fill a granary? The answer suggests a radical shift in human behavior. At some point during the drought in the Middle East, people started growing their own food. Unable to maintain a mobile way of life, they would have stayed close to any source of water they could find and planted new fields of wheat and barley around them.
Rather than just following food sources around different locations, for the first time what people start to do is that they bring these resources back to them. Not just as harvested food, but they're bringing them as seeds. And they're growing them next to their village. And that's the first time, really, this is the first time we see this anywhere in the world.
The Stone Age people of the Middle East were becoming farmers, the first farmers in the world.